What is up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be finally rounding out the cycle of the color power ranking videos by looking at yellow today and all the revealed cards, at least in their state before what I assume is going to be the June 5th changes, because this was filmed kind of late June 4th, early June 5th, before what I assume is going to be the update that comes out later today. So maybe this entire video is useless. Maybe it's still exactly on point. I don't know. That's up to you to decide. And also to decide if you deem it valuable to watch the rest of this video. But I'm kind of hoping you do. So hopefully you're going to be joining me on this journey that we're about to partake in. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, we need to remind ourselves how this works. Just a little reminder for anyone and everyone. Each yellow card will be given a rank A to F, A, B, C, D, F. Each card will be awarded a score based on its rank, 5 for an A, 1 for an F, and so on and so forth with all those in between. And then each card's score will be added and then divided by the number of cards, so as to ensure that because yellow has the most amount of cards out of every color, that it is not given an unfair advantage, and likewise in the opposite direction of the least amount of cards. But also a little thing that we have to look at before we dive into all the yellow cards is yellow's color identity. Kind of what is yellow's game plan, what's their goal, what should we kind of expect from a card of this color. But yellow's main purposes are to diverge, equip, and repurpose. And out of all the colors, yellow specializes in gear. For their gig identities, yellow wants different values. Yellow interacts with rival units by sacrificing a unit or a gear to directly defeat them, or directly defeating them based on cost specifically. And as for yellow's street cred identity, it wants a significantly different total from their rival. So if they're playing against a blue player, they want as high as a street cred identity or value that they can get, and opposite with the red player, where they will want the lowest amount of street cred identity or value, whereas red wants the highest. But finally, getting into the first yellow card, starting out with the first legend, we have Dum Dum Maelstrom Triggerman. It is just the 2 to flip, or 1 now, with the changes last Friday, and its call effect is that you may defeat a friendly gear. If you do, draw 4 cards, otherwise draw 1 card. And a couple of notes that I have about this is that if you flip him early, the effect is still good with a pay 1, draw 1 effect, but not exactly a legend tier effect that is outbeat, or just beat out rather, by the green card Peace Offering, which for 1 eddy allows you to adjust any gig value to one of your friendly gig values, and then if you control a gig value pair, then you get to draw 1, which if you're playing these two for 1 and you have them side by side and you can control when and how you play Peace Offering, Dum Dum honestly stands no chance against it. It is only going to be a one-time effect, so it's more of like a program legend rather than a kind of eminent legend whose ability you can keep triggering over and over again. And the game plan with this legend is going to be flipping it later when your board is more developed and you can reliably have a piece of gear that you don't exactly mind defeating to maximize this card's effect. But taking all that into account, I've given it the grade of a C, because while it has a good effect with a huge upside, you need setup to maximize. And like I've said in previous videos of the series, I personally am not too high on the go solo legends or just the kind of program legends where it doesn't really feel, at least personally, like a legend to me. unless the effect or the base unit of the Go Solo Legend is good enough, and Dum Dum personally doesn't fall in that category. But looking at a different legend, a legend that is more in line with ones that I like, we have River War Detective on the Hunt. He is just the one to flip, can't go solo, and his call effect is that you draw a card. So already, paying 1, flipping him, immediately drawing a card. Very good there. And his ability is that when a unit attacks, you can spend him. Choose a gear from your hand with cost 2 or less. Equip it for free to a friendly yellow unit with no equipped gears. And out of the 8 gear cards revealed so far, 6 out of the 8 of them cost 2 or less, which means that you should be able to have a fair amount of them in your deck, to the point where the limitation on the gears costing 2 or less shouldn't be that big of an issue. 1 cost to draw a card is good. It's pretty great, considering that in some it's at least the going kind of rate, or which could start to be the outdone kind of rate for it, is 2 eddies to draw a card. So this is not really going to get too much better, with just the 1 to do so and then the ability stapled onto the card after. And the ability triggers when any unit attacks, but obviously has many restrictions to it, with him having to be up initially, and then you having a gear in hand, and not just that, but one that costs 2 or less, and then the yellow unit, or not even just that, the unit has to be a yellow unit, and it has to have no equipped gears, and you have to be attacking. So definitely a lot kind of there with it, that a lot of hoops that you have to jump through for it. But I still think this is a good card, and I've given it the rank of B, because he has a strong ability, requires some easy setup, and has a good call effect as well. Moving on to the next legend, another program kind of variant of legend, we have Victor Vector, Sit Down and Relax. And the only text on him is that when you flip him, you search the top 5 cards of your deck for up to 2 gear that cost 2 or less each. So kind of fill in your hand, at most just going to get the 2 though. And then, as it says on the card, the rest of them go to the bottom of your deck in a random order. And at the worst, this card will search 15% of your deck with the trigger. So this is if you flip him on turn 1, because you're drawing the 6 in your initial hand, and then you draw the 1, no matter whether you're going first or second, you'll have 33 cards, searching 5 out of 33. 5 divided by 33 is roughly 15%, which means it's roughly 15% of your deck at minimum, which is pretty good. Although, while the effect is good, it is only a one-time effect. And then past the effect, Victor is just another Eddie in your pool there. And that's why I've given him the rank of a C as well. I will say for him and Dum Dum, it's more kind of trending towards the C- side, because the effect is good, but a one-time trigger is bad for a legend in my opinion, as I kind of went over before. But moving out of legends and onto the first unit, we have Second Hand Bombus. 2 to play, 2 power, and while the unit cannot attack, it has blocker. So when a rival unit attacks, you may spend this unit to redirect the attack to it. There are very few cards currently with blocker. The card is perfectly normal and average from what we've seen so far, at least from the alpha kits, and just in general, because there aren't too many other cards with blocker, or just ways to give blocker past Goro Legends, to be honest. And it is a nice low-cost way to keep 1 or even more gigs if your opponent has a very big unit, yours. But overall, this unit has been given the grade of a C, because it's a low cost for a nice one-time use way, at least likely going to be a one-time use, to keep gigs longer. I will say this card is more kind of towards the C+ side, mainly again because of how kind of few ways there are right now to give cards Walker. But I mean, if you even just play the Goro that can give any of your units Walker, then it gets a bit outclassed. And with Mandibular Upgrade as well, which we'll be going over later, being a very easy way to give any unit Walker, it's not particularly the strongest. Moving on to another unit though, we have Hanako Arasaka in a Gilded Cage. She costs 3 to cast, has 0 power, 2 yellow ramps. You only need to be playing 1 yellow legend to be able to play her, and her play effect is that you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, then choose a friendly gig. Add all cards with cost equal to that gig's value to your hand, trash the rest. A couple notes is that at 0 power, this unit is basically a program. Of course, you could pump her up with gear, or if she attacks and you have Saburo Arasaka flipped, then she will have 1 power and be able to steal a gig, but otherwise, she just kind of sits there on the board. Cards you get are revealed, so your opponent will know what cards you're taking and which cards you don't. And this card requires setup as well as just a bit of luck, or you building your deck kind of around this ability or effect so as to maximize it. I've given this card a C because it requires setup, kind of a fair amount of setup, and you to build around it really, but the effect is good. It's just kind of a lot of hoops to jump through for it, more than I think it should be, and that is why it's been given the rank of a C. But moving on to another card from the off kit, we have T-Bug Amateur Philosopher. She is a 3 cost unit with 5 power, 1 ram, so you only need to be playing 1 yellow legend to play her, and that's it. This card is the future's Draft Chaff. It is perfectly normal and average, decently powered and costed unit, and I've given it the grade of a C because, quite frankly, it's just average, and sometimes that is just a-okay, because that is what C is for, being the middle of the road, and that is what I believe this card deems. Moving on to one of the newly revealed cards, though, with the blog posts about the colors and diving into them specifically, we have Gilded Matone. He is a 4 cost unit at 3 power, 2 yellow ram, so if you're playing any yellow legend, you are able to play him, and he has a play effect that you may defeat a friendly gear, and if you do, defeat a rival unit with cost 3 or less. So kind of playing into that yellow color identity that we discussed more previously, of sacrificing a gear to sacrifice a rival unit, and also defeating rival units based on their cost. And this is kind of Yellow's version of Royce Don't Call Me Simon, but with 1 less cost and 1 less power. And another notable difference about the difference between the two is that Royce Don't Call Me Simon does not require you to defeat a friendly gear to trigger its effect, but it also requires you to have, or meet rather, a street cred threshold for it to be able to target a rival unit with cost 3. Otherwise, it'll just target units with cost 2 or less. Although in yellow, gears aren't exactly hard to play or come across, so you should have a decent amount of sack fodder to make use of his ability, and it is a good way to clear blockers. Another thing about this, though, is that obviously you choose when you play him, so if you don't have a gear ready up to sacrifice, you simply don't have to play him. Although I've given this card a C, because while he is an okay removal spell on a subpar unit, he does clear all blockers, so he kind of clears the way for you, or just kind of smaller units like an Evelyn Parker possibly, so you don't have to worry about spending a unit to take them out. And then it is just a unit left on the board afterwards. Next up, though, we have Caliber Totentanz's Top Dog. She is a 5-cost unit with 6 power, and she has a defeated trigger where a rival discards 1, and then if the card's cost is equal to the value of a friendly gig, that rival then discards 1 more. However, she has 4 yellow RAM, so you are only able to play her in decks that run 2 yellow legends or more. First thing to note, just straight off the rip, is that it is a bad cost to power ratio. We've seen cards like Swordwise Hustle be 3 cost for 5 power. This is 2 more cost for 1 more power. Another thing is that you can't really reliably control its defeat. There are cards like Reboot Optics or Cyberpsychosis, if this card is equipped with gear, that will allow you to kind of control its defeat. Specifically with Reboot Optics, buffing it up to 10 power, which will allow it to seal 10 gigs, being very nice. But the mode 2, where its defeat trigger, even kind of the value lies in it, entirely relies on the opponent's discard to trigger. So your opponent knows what the card does. They know that they probably don't want to trigger the effect, and they control which card that they discard. So unless you have a wide array of kind of gig values and numbers to the point where you could reasonably expect to encompass any card that your opponent will discard, you really just can't entirely rely on that threshold being met. And if you're not really playing it to meet that threshold, or with the ability to meet that threshold, then it's not exactly the best card in my opinion. And that is why it's been given a D, because you need a way to control its defeat, then get lucky with the discard just to utilize its effect on a decent unit. But a card or unit specifically that is not decent is Jackie Wells' Ride or Die Choom. He is a 6-cost unit with 6 power. He is 3 yellow RAM, so you need to be playing 2 yellow legends to be able to put him in your deck. Although this unit has +2 power, +2 power for each of your friendly gigs. The earliest you can play this card is on turn 3. The power buff is permanent, not like with the Koro Takamura card that seems to kind of be in the similar cycle to this, where it's just their face, and that buff only applying during your turn. And this card gets better as you try to win the game, and you're just always going to want gigs anyway. So this card really doesn't need anything past the 6 eddies to play it. And overall, I've given it an A, because quite frankly, it is the best unit in the game right now, and it absolutely will get nerfed, because there is also not a lot of removal that can just affect him at all. The best thing or option is Carnage at the Coliseum, and that requires your opponent to have a unit that is bigger than Jackie Wells, which is going to be very hard in my experience to do so. Another thing to note about this card is that if you have Mandibular Upgrade, you can equip it to Jackie Wells and give him blocker. And in that case, you can take out, quite frankly, any unit that your opponent throws at you. It's going to get nerfed. So I suppose there's not exactly the biggest emphasis on explaining the rationale as to why this card deserves an A. Expect it to be gone probably by the time this video comes out. But the next card that probably won't be, if the only change being a probable reduction to its cost by 1, and that's the biggest change I can see happening to this card. We have Atom Smasher Metal Over Meat. He is a 9 cost unit with 15 power, and he has 5 yellow RAM, which means that you're going to have to be playing 3 yellow legends, the only 3 yellow legends, in order to be able to play him in your deck. And all he has is one very simple play effect: defeat all other units. It's just straight up a board wipe. It's the only one in the game. It's the only removal spell, if I'm not wrong, that targets multiple units, or only form of removal that targets multiple units. Just a very chunky boy. The earliest that you can play this card is turn 6, so when you're rolling out kind of your last gig anyways. Your opponent will be able to rebuild beyond 1 unit first, though, because this is probably going to be what all of your eddies go towards, is just playing Atom Smasher. And then you can't attack with him straight away. So he just kind of sits there, you pass the turn, your opponent's going to have access to all their eddies to play out whatever they need to, or even have the ability to first. And another big thing about this card is that he automatically steals 2 gigs with 15 power, although he needs plus 5 power to be able to steal 3, which, if you're playing yellow and you're kind of speccing into gears, isn't going to be the hardest thing to do. Although I've given this card the rank of AC, because if you can survive long enough, that's a big if, then this card will definitely put in some work. I think this card has obviously only gotten better with the recent changes of you needing 7 gigs to win, because if the games are likely going to be going on longer, then this gives you a longer chance to be able to play him. But I don't see you being able to play him or get to the point where you can play him in more than like half of your games. And then at the same time, you have to not miss a singular eddy drop per turn. And then you're likely only going to have a max of like 2 in your deck, because you don't really want 3 like super high costed cards unless there's a way to cheat them out. It is good, but it is kind of conditional and situational, and a lot more of an if you even get the opportunity to play this card. And that is why he has been knocked down to a C. But moving away from units to gear now, we have Karoshi Optics. It is a 1 costed gear with only 1 yellow RAM, meaning you had to play 1 yellow legend to be able to put this in your deck. And it also gives the unit it is equipped to, or face-up legend it's equipped to, plus 1 power. And it has an attack trigger where you look at a friendly face-down legend without revealing it. So you'll know what it is, but your opponent will not. There's only one kind of real use for this card right now, being Dum Dum. Otherwise, there's not really a penalty to flipping your legends. It does give you a buff of 1 power, and it will get better as more legends like Dum Dum come out. More kind of program legends where it just has the flip ability or call ability. And another thing to note about this card is that Mantis Blades in red is 1 cost for plus 2 power. So while this card only has the 1 cost for plus 1 power, its attack ability is valued at 1. or at least kind of half of an eddy. But honestly, this card is just not good. It has very little use case, and that's why it's been given an F. Because while it'll likely get better with time, right now it is just an auto sell. Yeah, there's not really that much to say about it. It is just entirely unimpressive. The only time you're really going to play this is if you desperately need the +1 power buff. But then there are just so many other better ways to give or just to buff your units up power-wise. And yeah, until like you can have a deck full of cards or legends like Dum Dum, then this card is just, it's just an auto sell. But moving on to a very better piece of gear, we have Mandibular Upgrade. It is a 1-cost gear, does not give your unit any power buff, although it only has 2 yellow rams. So if you're playing, as long as you're playing a yellow legend, this card will be able to go in your deck. And it's very simple. It gives your unit or face-up legend that you equip this to blocker. There are very few cards that give blocker currently. Going back to that point, it is very cheap to play as it only costs 1, and it is a very easy shoo-in if you're playing a yellow legend at all for its ability to save gigs, which is precisely what you're going to be wanting to win the game, or rather just need to win the game. And it is so powerful, in my opinion, that I've given it the grade of an A. A very big change and difference from the last card that we went over. It is a very easy way to give any unit blocker. It is very cheap, and it has low RAM, and at the worst, if you don't need it, you can just sell it. I definitely think this is, if it stays, no matter, well, I won't say no matter, but I think no matter what, this is going to be one of the more powerful cards in the set, or one of the kind of most prominent and more needed cards in the set. I think if you're playing a yellow legend at all, you're probably just going to slot 3 into the deck no matter what. And just as opposite as Crochet Optics was an auto sell, I think this card is an auto include. But moving on to the second revealed card with the color blog posts about yellow, we have Zetatech Faceplate. It is a 2-cost gear, gives your unit +2 power, which, as we know from Mantis Blades, is equivalent to 1 eddy. So its ability is equivalent to 1 eddy, and it has only 2 yellow RAM, meaning as long as you're playing a yellow legend, this card can go in your deck. And its ability is that when this unit or legend is spent, because also you can equip this to just a face-up legend in your legend zone, or just in general. So when the legend is spent to generate an eddy, this card's ability will also trigger. But when this unit or legend is spent, you adjust a gig. It doesn't have to be yours. It could be your opponent's. It could be any gig. You adjust it by up to 1. Then, if you control 3 or more gigs with different values, you get to draw 1. You can, as I pointed out already, you can adjust your opponent's gigs, paying 1 for the power buff and 1 for the gig adjustment / card draw that is tied to that. And yes, you can equip to the legends as well, as long as they're flipped, even if they're in your legend zone. I think this card is very strong. That is why I've also given it the grade of an A, because it is a very, very reliable card draw. There's not a lot of gear removal at all right now, and it has the power buff attached to it. I think this card is very kind of flexible in its ability, and I think all of the 3 facets of this card are very good, and that all combines into a very great little faceplate package indeed, which merits the grade of the A for me. Moving on to another piece of gear, the most expensive piece of gear we have revealed so far. It is Gorilla Arms, which is 4 cost to play, gives your unit +4 power, and is 4 yellow RAM, meaning you need to be playing 2 yellow legends to be able to put this card in your deck. And its ability is the first time this unit specifically, I assume, because when you go solo legend, it becomes a unit. So the first time this unit steals a gig each turn, you may steal a rival gig with the same number of sides. So let's say you're playing against a green player, which, as I note, is the card that, or not the card, sorry, but rather the color that this mainly works well against, because they want kind of same, whether that be gig value or same amount of gig sides. So let's say you're playing against a green player, or a player kind of specking in green mainly, and they have 2 D4s, right? You swing in with, let's say, Jackie Wells. He connects. You get to steal 2 D4s. Now let's say your Jackie Wells has 12 power because you have 3 gigs, right? Or I guess it would be 16 with the power buff of Gorilla Arms. Swinging with Jackie, you hit your opponent. They have 2 D4s, 2 D8s. You can steal both of their D4s as well as both of their D8s. But if your opponent only has 2 D4s and 1 D8, then you will steal the 2 D4s and only the 1 D8, even if they also have like a D12. Overall, though, I've given this card the grade of a C, because while the 4 power buff is very impactful, it requires your opponent to want same-sided gigs to maximize it. And just while the effect is very good, it likely won't trigger very often, again, unless you're kind of playing against a green player. Because as soon as your opponent even knows you have this card, if they're playing blue or red, they don't care about having the same-sided gig dice. So they're just going to avoid that as much as possible to make this card as non-impactful as possible for you. So I'd say it is not a card to include all 3 of as possible in your deck, but where this card is going to be strong, it is going to be strong, and the +4 power buff is nothing to scoff at as well. But moving out of the gear and into programs now, we have 1 out of the 4 brain dances revealed with After Party at Lizzie's. It is a 2-cost program, and you get to adjust a rival gig by up to ±2, so up 1, up 2, down 1, or down 2. And then if a friendly gig has the same value as that rival gig, then you are able to draw a card. Things to note that you can only adjust a rival gig, and as long as both D4s are rolled, you can expect the card draw. And another recently revealed card, Peace Offering, is just generally better at 1 less, and that is why this card has been given a C, because it is not the best version of the effect, but it is still a decent card, or you can just sell it. A little reminder, or if you haven't watched the green video yet, first off, go do so, please, at least. But I gave Peace Offering an A, so obviously this card, while it is worse, isn't bad, and there's only kind of 2 of the effect, this being at least seemingly the baseline, which is why Peace Offering kind of ranks so high for me. Obviously, this card could get a lot worse as more cards like Peace Offering are revealed, but right now it will sit at the C. Moving on to probably one of the more prominent spells in general. We have Cyberpsychosis. It is a 2-cost program. It is a quick hack, so when your opponent attacks with one of their units, you're able to play this in response. And it has 3 yellow ram, meaning that you need to be playing 2 yellow legends to be able to put this in your deck. And its ability, or effect rather, is that you may also play this program when a unit attacks by paying this card's cost and spending a friendly unit or a face-up legend. So essentially this card costs 3 to play on your opponent's turn, whereas just the 2 to play on your turn. But the actual effect of the card is that you give an equipped unit +2 power this turn for each of its equipped gear, and then you defeat the unit at the end of this turn. It requires your opponent to be playing gear at all and using it. So if you use this on, let's say your opponent has a caliber, right? And they have crochet optics equipped to it, and you play this on it, there is a high chance that you are going to have more in your deck. And so your opponent can just decide, okay, I'm just not going to play gear then. And then this card is at best a Hail Mary option for you. It does give the unit that it affects the chance to swing out, whether that be yours or your opponent's. And it needs 3 ram, so you'll likely be playing this in a deck that is gear heavy anyways. And I've given this card the grade of a B because it has 2 different use capabilities, being removal on your opponent or just kind of a Hail Mary option for you and one of your opponent, or not that, but one of your units. And it is just a good flexible card in general, and at worst you can just sell it. But moving on to the final yellow card, we have Reboot Optics. It is a 2-cost program, 2 yellow ram, meaning if you're playing a yellow legend, you can put this in your deck. And you give a friendly unit +4 power this turn, then defeat it at the end of your turn. Discard programs after they resolve. So 4 power is only good in general if it gets whatever unit to 10 or 20 or even 30 power. I personally think that defeating your unit at the end of the turn is very harsh because board state, if you haven't noticed, is pretty important in this game. And I think that the harshness is very detrimental to this card, which bumps it down to a D in a grade, because unless you're using this as well in a Hail Mary or big momentum swing kind of play, then just sell it. The only reason it's not an F is because it has capabilities with the Hail Mary potential, and it also synergizes well with Caliber, which gets it to 10 power. But in general, I am not very high at all on this card. Because Mantis Blades, which is red piece of gear, is 1 cost for +2 power. And if you just play 2 Mantis Blades, it'll be the same amount as this, and you get to keep your unit after the turn. I think if this was 1 cost, it would probably be a C. But it is 2, and alas, it remains a D because of it. Moving on to kind of the averages of the type-specific rankings. First, we have Legends, and this is just kind of taking the grades of the Legends, dividing it by the amount of them there are to get their final grade of a 3.33 average. For units, their average was a 3.14. For gear, its average was a 3.50, and that is even with the F of the crochet optics, which is a good sign for yellow's gear. And for their programs, they were given an average of 3.0. There only being the 2 of Cyberpunk being a B and Reboot Optics being a D. But yellow's final score when you take all the cards' scores and add it together, divided by the amount, is 3.235, which when we go to the color rankings, in first place, we still have green, still the best overall, in my opinion. In second place, we still have red. And in third place, we still have blue, meaning that yellow unfortunately falls into fourth place. Moving on to some final takeaways from the series, though, is that it is kind of interesting that the color with the most revealed cards sits the lowest. And that could possibly be because Cyberpunk TCG and Weirdco is releasing the most exciting or best cards of other colors, which, while there are more yellow cards, could just be that there's less, or that there are more kind of just the average or bad cards in yellow that have been revealed. The best cards will also be nerfed, and it is unsure that the worst cards will be buffed, because another thing to note is that the lowest average was above a 3. It was 3.235, I think it was, for yellow. So in general, the average is a little above the grade of a C. Yeah, on average, you'll probably expect every color's final score to decrease as more and more cards come out, because I think there's just going to be more mediocre and bad cards in all the other colors that come out, more than the better cards for that comes out. And with more and more card releases, the power scaling will also become more clear as more cards with the same or even just similar effects come out, and the grades will become more and more accurate. Currently, the largest amount out of a color that we have is 17, which is about half of the final amount for a color, so not exactly the biggest amount to go on. And yeah, that is really kind of it for now. The update, as I mentioned earlier, will likely be coming out today, so looking forward to that. We'll absolutely be making a video on that. It will probably be coming out the 6th, though, because I am going to the Dodger game on the 5th. They are playing the Angels. It should be a decent game to watch, I think, personally. And just sports-wise, have you guys been watching the Stanley Cup playoffs? Have you guys been watching the NBA finals? Are you guys excited for the World Cup? I am pretty into sports, mainly hockey, but baseball is also probably my second best sport. I like it a lot as well. Yeah, just if you guys like sports, have you been following along with them? What are you looking forward to? But that will bring it to the end for today's video. I would like to thank you for watching me, for watching the video to the end, and for watching me kind of blubber on about cards that probably all look different, besides maybe the 2 that were revealed. And just in general to a video that probably isn't going to hold much value by the time it comes out, if we're being completely honest. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day as well. But for now, this series is coming to an end, so I would like to thank you for watching to the end of the series as well. Although it has officially been flatlined, because I don't plan on doing something like this again, with each video being like 40 minutes or so, and then putting that together and just all the stuff that comes with that. I'll definitely be kind of more specific in the future about kind of card releases and stuff like that. but definitely a good learning point for my relationship with the game and the channel as well. And I hope that you learned something from it as well throughout your time watching this. And yeah, as I mentioned before, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you next time. And peace out, chums. Ciao.